those of us who were privileged to be among his friends. We invite you to enjoy again now some joyful moments which capture the unique talent of Russell Harty.
Me and the Colonel I kind of liked. I thought it was a good movie, and it was something different, and I hadn't done anything like that before. And it was really, it was a disaster.
The box office disaster.
The what?
Was it a box office disaster? Disaster.
You're putting me in a panic. Hasn't he got an adorable accent? Huh? Where's he from? Where are you from, Manchester?
Blackburn.
What?
It's very near to Manchester.
Blackburn?
Yeah. It's a very lovely sort of villagey little...
Now, is that spelled B-L-A-C-K-B-U-R-N?
Very good. Very good.
Well, that's terribly unusual.
Why?
Well, it should be pronounced Bilbo or something. All the names in England get me crazy. When I first came here, it's really marvelous. They used to say, well, we're driving up to Leicester. I thought it was spelled L-E-S-T-E-R. And it's what? L-E-I-C-E-I-S-T-E-R, right?
Well, I think you
Well, that's Leicester.
You're a Virgo, aren't you?
I'm sorry to say I am.
That makes two of us.
Are you a Virgo? Well, then you know what it's been like, don't you?
Very right.
I'm surprised that you're a Virgo. I wouldn't have thought you were. I think Virgos are, I think there are many wonderful qualities that we have.
Name two.
But luck is not one of them. Forget it.
What qualities do you think we possess? I don't mean that we're analysing each other, but I mean, what are we noted for?
I'm not going to analyse you. No. I think, there are very superficial things that people say, that we're always terribly neat and very organized and everything in its place and a place for everything and all of that.
Is that true with you?
Up to a point. I'm much better about that than I used to be. I'm a bit more careless now than I was. Also that Virgos are very often called into service of others. We like to please other people and do things for them.
That's true. God knows I'm doing my best at this moment.
Is it a strain?
No, it's not a strain. It's coming very easy for me. So forgive me for interrupting.
No, I think Virgos are creative, very creative people and very loyal people.
And very nervous people, I think.
Very tense, would you say?
Terribly tense.
I suppose so.
We'd better tell people what we're...
But numerologists, I think, are the most accurate of all. Numerologists.
What's a numerologist?
Numerologist is the person who adds up the letters of your name and your date of birth into numbers, and that's absolutely factual. Your whole life, from the day you were born right through to the day you die, is before you. That is not like clairvoyancy or astrology.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, well, that's what a numerologist is.
But once you've been numerologized, is it with you do you get one prediction for the rest of your life?
No, you can go back and see them, but they give you a prediction for 8, 9, 10 years or however long you want.
Are you a well man physically?
I hope so. Please,
because
yes.
you work very hard, don't you? You're a prodigious worker. Wordsworth, who wrote poetry, you may have heard of him once or twice, said that the people who worked prodigiously had a restless kind of energy which they couldn't properly control. Does the work push you a lot, or do you sit back and say, I'm going to do that, and that?
No, I think, I think that I once read a thing that Winston had written or said at one time or another, that the human mind, he said, the human mind is incapable of rest. What it needs is change. And he's right. It changed, that thing, something new happening all the time.
Well, how do you distinguish that from impatience, though, personal impatience?
Oh, well, I don't know. I would think they were one and the same.
Apart from being quite a deep thinker, which you clearly are, because you've thought certain things out for yourself.
Flatter some more, go on.
I'll do a bit more flattery. You're also a doer. You've proclaimed quite loudly about the importance of people who do things, rather than the importance of people who have things done to them. At the same time, you're not...
Well, I don't think that it's important to me. It's important.
But you're a doer, aren't you? You are a doer.
I am a doer, but I don't think that somebody who is just an opposite of what I am should be criticized for it.
I'm not saying that. I'm not criticising. I'm trying to get you into a category which I know you don't like having to be put into a category. But just before we came onto the air, for instance, you surprised me by telling me about the disparate things you're doing. I mean, you're doing a Christmas edition of Vogue. You're going to produce an opera or direct an opera. I mean, these are all doing things. You're a great voracious. You have a great voracity for doing things.
I do, for a simple reason that I enjoy doing things.
Well, here's an unflattering question. Is that related to the fact, do you think, that you're not a very tall person? You're a small
It's possible. It's very possible. I think a lot of short people have been motivated by it, particularly as they go through the early school. And they grew up to quite individuals. I think Napoleon was one of them. And there were other examples like that. Yeah.
But were you bullied at school? Were you shouted at school for being small?
No, I wasn't, but I was pushed around.
We've got a Napoleon hat in the wardrobe. Do you want me to go and get that? Then you can have a...
Hats don't become me.
Are you vain?
They really don't. As much as you probably.
Yeah, listen, I wish you'd keep the camera on me. He's hogging this tonight. You really
There
are.
was a time in our nation's history, shut up, be quiet a minute, when only you stood...
You're not supposed to laugh in your own show, you know, Russell. It's very naughty.
Only you stood between England and Hitler.
Yes.
He's the one on the left.
Yes, that's right.
You were in the war, weren't you, defending our shores. What were you doing in the war, defending our shores? It's a very serious question. Please give me a serious answer.
All right. Where were you during the war, anyway? What's that? It's a marvellous goldfish impersonation. What?
Sorry, your ears are dirty.
Fuzzy, if you get down a little further, we can still see you. You see, you're supposed to hide out of sight.
This is a very attractive suit.
It's all the same. It's a blazer, Fozzie, a blazer and trousers.
I'm only a bear. What do you expect?
Does he have this? Do you have, Fozzie, a joke that you could tell us all tonight to make us laugh a lot? I mean, to try it. I presume you've had a holiday from your a term's holiday in which to practice your jokes. I mean, have you got a joke you could launch on us tonight?
Do I have a joke?
Be careful, because if you ask Fozzie for a joke right out in the middle of time, he may go into his cataleptic fit.
He could not put it out. He couldn't say it. He couldn't say it. No,
Fozzie, every now and then, you ask him to tell a joke, and he's not prepared, he goes right into a cataleptic fit.
What does a cataleptic fit look like? I mean, is he...
Well, it's actually a very... Oh, dear, you've done it. You've done it. You see what he's done?
It's not working, is it, Fozzie? Fozzie, come on out of it.
No,
Good.
Oh, too bad. He came out.
Where do you think your irreverence comes from? I mean, your calculated irreverence. Does it come from your mum or your dad? Or does it come
from my father.
It does?
Yeah, he saw the joke and everything. Our mother was very proper. You had to sing, somebody voice is calling, you know, very proper. And then I used to put, la-da-da-da. Oh, don't put the band parts in again. She used to get annoyed with me. Because I used to sing all the bits on the end, you know.
But you've been working in this last week or two, haven't you? You've been preparing a bit for tonight, doing a bit of scribbling.
Trying to think of what to say next and what to do. What are you going to do?
Well, you haven't done so badly so far. What have you been scribbling or thinking about?
Well, I was thinking that I like to finish off with a little song that I wrote the words to the old tune of Valari, and they kind of express the way I feel towards my audience. So I'll sing that for you. I love you, I do. I love you, honest and true. Over 70, life is divine. Now I'm having a wonderful time. Though I should be retired, I still get inspired, continuing on with the show. So when Russell was calling, without any warning, I go. Over 70-odd years, 70-odd years. Yes, 70-odd years. I was 7 when I first began. I remember singing the first song, I can remember the words of the first song I ever sang. You know, in Rochdale, we didn't sound our H's very well. So the lady who taught me the little song for the singing competition, she was working hard trying to make me sing, what makes me love you as I do? What makes me think you're so divine? What And I would keep singing, what makes me love you as I do? What makes me love you as I... Sing what? What makes me love you as I... And I couldn't get it right. So she says, I'm fed up with it. Now, will you sing quat? So I sang, what makes me love you as I do? What makes me think you're so divine? And I won the competition with quats. Anyway, over 70, life is divine. Now I'm having a wonderful time. Though I should be retired, I still get inspired, continuing on with the show. So when Russell was calling, without any warning, I go. Over 70-odd years, I've sung most every song that you know. I love you, I do. I love you, honest and true. For a beautiful home by the sea, why, you've all helped to build it for me. For without you, where would I be? Most certainly not in Capri. Thank you.
Well, now, you live in enormous opulence in Manhattan Island.
I think you could say that.
What floor do you live on of your apartment building?
4.
So what happens?
I used to live in the penthouse, but I was always being robbed because they used to come in over the roof and drop down on my terrace. So I moved.
Was it not a pleasurable experience? I mean, people would think that...
Well, I thought being robbed, they showed such terribly bad taste. I remember one night I came home and they'd robbed me. And they'd thrown all my clothes on the bed and not taken my furs because they were a little worn. And I thought that was rather rude. I thought they should have at least taken my pink stole, but they didn't.
But how does your dog get its exercise? I mean, are you to be seen walking up and down the fashionable east side with a thing on the end of the lead?
Well, in the morning, she's paper trained.
What does that mean?
Well, how can I explain it without being offensive? Let me think. It simply means this, that in the morning, she relieves Dame Nature by using a newspaper.
I see.
But all through the rest of the day, she goes out into the street, which was very awkward when there was a newspaper strike in New York, because she was used to using the New York Times.
Right.
And it just wasn't published. The only published paper was a terrible little rag down in the village called the Village Gossip or something. So naturally, I bought 6 copies of the Village Gossip, rushed in and put them down, but no.
She wouldn't have it?
Not at all. She was waiting for the New York Times to come out again. But she's a darling and she's no trouble at all. Housebroken. She goes with me all over the world, except to London. She's got no teeth, because she's too old for teeth.
Well, how does she masticate?
Quite easily. Yes, there's no trouble at all. Next question, please.
You're also very elegantly groomed. An elegantly groomed lady. Do you spend a lot of money on clothes?
Well, I do go to a good dressmaker. I mustn't say who, must I?
If you wish, you can.
Can I?
Yes.
Hardy Amy's.
Well, we've heard of him.
I love his clothes. And they last and last. You never get rid of them. You get sick of them.
What about places like C&A and M&S?
What?
What about C&A and M&S?
C&A. Oh, yes. What's M and... Oh, the M and something.
Marks and Spencer's.
Oh, yes, they're very good. They're very good for food.
For food?
Cakes and other things.
And underwear.
Yes, underwear. Quite right.
Absolutely.
But,
Are you an easy person to work with on the stage? Do you know?
Now, I shouldn't think I'm easy, but I do like the truth. I don't like people to pretend. I like them to really mean what they're... That's all that's the difference with me. I'm not very clever. I'm not a great actress, but I speak the truth. And that's why they think it's great. It isn't great, but it's the truth. And I was brought up as a little girl. My parents were terrified I was going to be a liar. A fibber, you know. Not wicked lies, but always...
Tiny lies.
Tiny lies,
Yeah.
and saying things that weren't, you know, I invented them. And they brought me up to be true. I used to be punished if I didn't speak the truth.
So you cleave to that now as a
And
guardian?
now I do it as my profession.
You've lost your heart many times, though, in your life, haven't you?
Well, yes, it was my doing. It was because I believed the way I was brought up and also the times that we lived in. I'm not particularly proud that I have been married 7 times. To me, that's quite a number. But it was just what I believed in, that everything had to be legal. It must be legal in the marriage, you know, certificate and all of that. Very well, I went through it. I can look back now and say, oh, you know, why didn't someone... Now this is interesting. I'm going to be very honest with you. It's like crying out, why didn't someone guide me? Why didn't someone stop me? They could not have. This was my destiny during those years. I did it. I have no one to blame, and I don't even blame myself. But I have learned quite a lesson after all those years and numbers, we'll call them. But I don't think I'd do it again.
Is it a problem for you? I mean, do you recognise yourself a thing called a generation gap? I mean, is there any generation gap between you and your daughters?
Well, there's a generation between us. But I don't think there's any gap such would indicate great problems or a great divide. No, but there is a generation between us that has to be recognized by both of us. No, I believe in a lot of love and a lot of discipline, and you know, try to do the best I can.
When you say discipline, do you obviously call the family together at times? Do you have recognised times for calling the family together as a unit?
Well, I suppose that would be at a mealtime, and we, despite the fact that we have many official calls on our time at mealtime, that we can't always be with our children. We certainly did try to always have a meal a day with them, even if it might just be breakfast. But one has to, this is hard for a mother to do, and a working mother to do, is to find the time and make the time for the family to be together.
Did you ever feel tempted to smack them when they were naughty?
Oh, my dear, I still do. Not tempted, compelled.
You all make a very good couple over there. I was just noticing.
Kermit.
Hey.
Why did you leave the studio? Why did I have to come here separately? Why didn't you? You said that. What is it?
I was riding in a little car and I didn't have room, so it was okay. Possibly you might be able to give her a ride home. Would you like to give Piggy a ride home? You two make a very lovely couple.
What about the pressures of space on pork?
What?
What about the pressures of space on pork?
What about the pressures of fist on flesh?
She's a
You're
killer.
pushing your luck, kid.
You can't stand too close, you know. I mean,
I
you really have to be a little careful
I have
there.
one thing to say to you finally, Miss Piggy, which is this. Can I just enumerate some of the things you wouldn't do?
You can tell me.
You're a very attractive woman.
Oh, yes, it's a curse.
You're a very well-known woman.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be safe to say that you are a mature woman.
You betcha.
And you're obviously very well groomed and you take great care of yourself and you coif yourself beautifully and frequently. What went wrong?
There's one thing I should have told you.
What?
This.
Be careful. You gotta... Piggy, please. No. Take it easy on it, I'm sorry about that. Really,
Please. Every morning when the sun rises in Spain, it lights up Salvador Dali before any other man. He's built his house upon the easternmost rocks in Catalonia. It's a tiny fishing community called Port Legat, and it hugs the shoreline. And this master of surrealism and showmanship paints nowhere else but here. The house is a bizarre collection of patios and pools, and statues and fountains, eggs and olive trees, pan tiles and whitewash. On the first morning that we were there, he went for a walk along the harbour outside his house, collecting fresh air and inspiration, and bits of driftwood and plaudits and greetings. He's an outsized showman, and he decided to wear a pair of very gaudy socks Elvis Presley had given him. So there's been a lot of rehearsed stick dropping in order to get the socks into view.
Please, somebody fix my socks.
How do you want?
You
want me to pull it?
Yes. Only one little leg, more.
Up.
And you remember, you take his socks off.
Dali.
Presley.
There's a Presley sock.
Exactly.
Good. Bonjour. Here's your... Wait a minute, we've dropped the cane.
Yes, because it's one cut.
Monsieur. He misses no unrehearsed opportunity to behave like a Catalonian pope, scattering his blessings where he will.
Bring little like embryons, but it's possible to put one cross. Good morning. Bonjour. Adiós.
Fantástico. Muchas gracias. Gracias.
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias. No, Salvador Dali, myself, is very rich, and Dali love tremendously money and gold. And Dali sleep the best after one day of war, receive one tremendous quantity of checks with dollars of any kind of golden symbols, and sleep absolutely divine. Love gold, and the theme of this is one fluid, divine diarrhea of money, dollars, and gold.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven.
No. Every kind of money is the more satisfactory for my brain. And my brain every day becoming more cybernetic brain, and plenty of golden prints circuits, electronic circuits. For this, the personality of Dali is very clear, is one cybernetic soft machine for create gold.
Now, the story of that whale caught in there
yes.
carries on into this picture,
It carries
doesn't
on. Now then, that was the beginning of the winter.
I've never had so much money pass through my hands so quickly. Never.
Now then, this is winter now. You see, that was the beginning of the winter. It was going cold.
Right.
Now it's snowing. And the whale suddenly got frightened. It was the whale. And it thought, oh, it's going to ice itself over. All the Park Lake, whatever shall I do? So we were just coming through from the market, and we heard the ice crack, and out it came. And out stepped Jonah. And
that's
Grandma,
Jonah there?
there's Jonah in his tall hat and frock coat. And Grandma,
Looking very smart, having just
very
come out of a
smart
whale's
to
belly,
say,
isn't
it's
it?
just come out. Yes. And Grandma said, why, if it isn't Jonah? And she came up to him, she says, Jonah, you must come home and have some tea. You must come and have some tea. And he said, Missus, I can't. I've got to go and save my people. And she says, well, where are your people? He said, they're in Egypt. And she said, yes, but you can't go to Egypt without your tea. And Miss Carter said, I hope she doesn't ask him because he smells terribly of fish. So, anyway, she gets him home and gives him... She went with him, and they went in... what are those, that thing where just two people sit in? A hansom cab.
Yes.
So that just the two, and we walked, and she gave him some tea. And then he went to Egypt.
But this must have left the whale very depressed.
Oh, it was. It cried.
Yeah.
And it went right down under again, and every time we went past there, it was with just this little lump. But we felt sorry for it.
Now listen, just to take a little break a minute, how are you accommodating yourself to your newfound, I presume, fame and newfound wealth as well? How do you accommodate that sudden onrush?
I don't.
You don't?
No, I'm still myself.
Well, clearly you are, but I mean, does it allow you to, for instance, to buy what you want to buy and to go and live where you want to live? And
No.
No.
No, you still have, you know, you can only eat 2 meals a day, and you don't want any more, and you can only wear. In fact, I have great difficulty getting clothes, so I make them. I go to the market.
You do?
Yes. And I went out to Macclesfield Market a week last Saturday to get an overall, which I couldn't buy in Wilmslow. And a woman said, I went and had some dinner. I had chicken and chips in a very nice little restaurant. And the woman said, doesn't that woman look just like Ellen Bradley? And so she said, of course it wouldn't be Ellen Bradley sitting in here, so I didn't let on.
You didn't?
No.
Quite right. Quite right. You said it was warm. It's freezing.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. It's very cold in here. Your cap is wet.
Yes, but more wet is much better, can you see?
What about your moustache?
My mustache never touch the water, you know?
Right.
You know, still. And sometimes put 2 jasmines for this proof that the mustache not a lot
in the water.
You better my foot with the foot of Dali very close.
In the list of people who are working, artists alive working in the world today, where do you figure in the hierarchy?
Dali, the first.
The first?
Ah, yes.
There is nobody more important?
No doubt. But no because Dali is very good. It's only because the others is so bad. You know?
Who is your favourite dead painter?
3. Velasquez first, second, Vermeer, the Dutch Vermeer, the Del, and after Raphael.
That's a long time. Those are all
long time the same, and every day my conviction is more firm about it. Okay, with this name, firm, everything is finished.
Would you say bonjour?
Bonjour, 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 bonjour. Good morning, bonjour.
Thank you so much.
Bonjour.
You were saying this, you say you don't like your name. You say you don't like yourself, well, we'll agree about that.
I didn't say it like myself. Now, hold on.
No, you said you didn't like your face.
Face.
Well, we'll leave that. But what was interesting, you said you didn't like your name, right. Russell Harty. Funny, I think Russell Harty is a jolly decent name. Harty, do you mean that Harty, that you don't want to be labelled as a hearty man? But it could mean having heart. But I looked up to see in Who's Who, and I saw that Harty is a very rare name. The only 2 Hartys I could find was a Major General who lives in Dorsetshire and a Canon who lives in Cork. I wouldn't mind being either of those chaps. But now, Russell, you can't dislike Russell. I'm very fond of Russell because half my family are Russells. My mother was a Russell, and so I'm very used to the name. And I like it. And I don't mind Richardson. I think it rather suits me.
But
because it's rather plain and rather, you know, Richardson. But the curious thing about names altogether, how weird it is how people's names sort of suit them. Do they get the name and grow up to be like it? or how the labels of the famous people, what better name for our greatest writer, Shakespeare, than Shakespeare itself? Shakespeare, it seems to give you the feeling of so many things, of such a dramatic shaking of space. It's not exactly an aggressive word, but it's an arresting. You can see a man, Shakespeare. It's a long word. Shakespeare loved long words. Now, Velasquez, how that suits that painter. Velasquez seems delicious. He puts his paint on, he enjoys putting it on, you feel you could eat the paint itself. Rembrandt, an old ruminative man, drawing old things with long memories. Rembrandt, how that suits that painter. Isn't it curious? Conrad, how it suits. Now, the best fitting name I should think that I can think of is Bernard Shaw. Shavian, Shaw, witty. When he was young, he had a red beard. Bernard, he was red beard. Shavian is what absolutely puts him in a box, doesn't it?
Have you been rehearsing all this?
No, I thought of them on the way down. I thought of the chaps. Now, can you think of it?
Well, yes, now you know why I don't like Harty. I mean, come on. If you go Velasquez, Shakespeare, Shaw, Rembrandt, Harty.
I can't see. There is a connotation of it, I suppose, from being a hearty man. But you're not a hearty man in the backslapping sense at all. No. I think you're worrying about nothing.
All right.
I think it's perfect. I think he's perfectly all right.
It's terribly difficult to explain in England to people how much class distinction there is. It's only when you go away and look back is that you see it.
Your money has not removed you from that kind of feeling and that
Oh, good God, no. I should be a Cockney working class yobbo till the day I die. I mean, when I moved into Windsor, it took me 4.5 years. I'll give you for instance. It took me 4.5 years to build an extension because the local council and the Preservation Society said his plans will be vulgar, nouveau riche and obscene. And they were actually published in one of the local papers as being that before I'd even printed any plans or had any plans for anyone to see, because they already knew that I was Cockney, vulgar, had success. I was going to be like a rock and roll singer and build a purple house onto a grade 2 listed mill house. And they just knew that, so they just printed.
But you are quite proud of your you're very proud of your origins, and you do often frequently proclaim...
Sure as hell I am. The reason I proclaim it is because half of the snobbery in this country comes to the working class themselves, who always think that other people are better. I know from elderly female members of my family, who should be nameless, otherwise I get in a lot of trouble, who say to me, I met a real lady on a bus today. You know, I met a real lady, and I feel like getting hold of them and saying, you are a real lady. Why do you say, because someone speaks better than you or has more money, that you are inferior to them? And so half of the reason why I always say I'm Cockney and I am working class and I don't give a damn if I am vulgar is to just be that and don't worry about it. Don't let anybody else with any pretensions bug you. Just go ahead and do what you're doing. And that's the reason I have never made a point. I've always made a point of being particularly working class. I mean, I usually come on and say, watch your mates and all this if I feel like being funny. Tonight, I didn't feel like being funny.
Of all places, in the middle of the book, you actually erect one or two strange moral conclusions in the middle of the book. At one point, you say you are aware that you have built a wall around yourself. Mm-hmm. Is that wall still as intact as it was at the end of your Glasgow time? Are you still clinging to your privacy? You say you're a private person.
I was told by somebody I respect very much and love. It sounds a very, very nasty disease. He said I got obsessional privacy. I suppose I have, Russell. I don't know. I think what I've always been trying to do is to actually, what I explain in there, so I'm going to tell you all over again, you've read it, but I'm trying to keep for myself, which is very selfish, the life I once had. In some form, like a small egg. It's impossible. Your paradise regained, I do say, is impossible and not always desirable. But at the same token, I don't see why I shouldn't have some of that, if there's any part of that standard or that life I had and enjoyed so much with my sister, when the first 10 years of one's existence were laid. Solid, concrete foundation of love, of trust, and of behavior. That's the word that begins with a capital B. It's how you behave and how you think of other people. It's compassion for others before yourself. All those lessons. Now, one was taught in the first 10 years, in the summer years. And you know, you've only got 6 decades left, really, by all standards, after that, haven't you? By the Bible terms. So that you layer each 10 years, a layer on top of your original foundation, but you're still going on under that foundation. So that through all the decades that God gives you, the spirit and the feeling of what you were first of all given and laid down are still with you. I mean, that's what I feel, and that's what I think I've tried to live with. If sometimes I've seemed to be reserved or insular or pulled away, it's that I don't want it trodden on. And there are a great many people who will tread on you or put you down the lavatory pan. So just keep out of their way. Then you can keep it safe. That's all.
Hello, everybody. My name's June. What's yours? Let me see you smile. Let me do a few tricks. I'm old and some new tricks. I'm very versatile. And you feel real good. I'll make you feel good. I want this bird to climb. So let me sting you, and we'll have a real good time. Yes, sir. We'll have a real good time.
Who's taught you how to do all these things?
Well, Mummy did have a dancing school, and we used to do shows for charity and everything.
Yeah.
And I hope to still do it. But that's where I mainly got all my talent from.
All your talent?
Well, not my talent, but
That's where you got your
that's where
practice
I got
from.
my practice from.
Right. Now then, it's no secret that your mum is sitting in the front row of the audience. Says your mummy, can we look at your mummy? Can we turn around and look at your mummy? There she is. Big hand for Mrs. Langford sitting there. Is she a handful, this little one sitting here?
Oh, no, she's adorable.
Well, I mean, now you have to say that. You couldn't sit in public and say she's horrid or she's naughty or anything. But she doesn't have any naughty traits or naughty tricks.
Oh, no, she's never a naughty girl.
Now, in the play Gypsy, the musical Gypsy, you know what I'm going to say?
Yes.
I can see a fear striking your face already. We ought to perhaps explain that it's about a pushy mum and a girl star who eventually loses her way and other things happen. I mean, do you ever get accused of pushing?
Oh, yes. And I often say I've done my full Rose bit and really pushed for her. But that's the only way to try and get on, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And behind you is a strong, silent man, or sitting just to your left-hand side.
Yes.
How do you cope with all that?
Well, I try and keep things on an even keel, really. All the rest of the family are on the stage, and I'm not, so that provides a bit of balance.
You split people down the middle, don't you, a lot? That is to say that people are hostile to you, or they're totally indifferent.
Oh,
You don't
absolutely,
want to know about
yeah.
that. What kind of reaction do you get from the people who are violently in favour of you? I mean, do you get fan mail?
Yes, a lot.
Is it scabrous or dangerous or interesting or exciting?
It's very sexy.
In what way?
Well, I seem to draw a lot of fantasies out of people, and a lot of the fan mail I get. A lot of it is awfully nice. I mean, they say, how's your baby and how's your wife and what's your mum's name and things like that. But some of them are worth framing.
Can you tell us about one or two of the framed ones?
No, I couldn't really. No, they really are quite heavy. Heavy duty letters they are.
Heavy duty?
Heavy duty.
Duty.
So I drop me T's sometimes.
Do you want to swap seats?
No, please, you're doing remarkably
Because
well.
you got your best side on, I got my worst side on.
All right, go on, I'll swap seats. And he made an informal approach to you?
Formal approach, yeah.
And you're a singer overnight?
Nearly, yeah. In fact, he's an incredible guy.
When you're being Rod Stewart, you, and also when you're being a part of another group, do you find any war between your personal identity and having to submerge yourself into a group?
I've never wanted to be a leader of a band. I never wanted to be sort of dictator, you know. I never wanted to tell the band what they've got to play. So I've always tried to stop looking at your notes. I've always trying to sort of submerge myself within the band.
Actually, I'm very pleased, and I'm sounding patronising, we don't know what to do, but if you actually just say it is vanity, it does clear up a lot of odd and peculiar things.
I'm not the only person to have had a hair transplant in the world either. I mean, it's not a big deal.
No,
I mean,
I know that.
It's, and people say, well, you know, why did you have it done? Well, if you were in a motorcycle accident or a motor car accident, God forbid, and you had to have a skin transplant, you know.
Can you understand, though, why people say to you, here you are, perhaps, yet again, the most successful singer in the world, and certainly one of the successful combination of composer, singer, writer. You've got everything you want, you've got money, wealth, privilege, friends, kid, you've got friends.
Oh, the restaurant, yes. Thank you, Russell.
And friends.
No.
Why do you want... Well, hello.
It's all legal on TV, folks.
Not staying there tonight, I tell you, and forever. Why do you need to...
Knowing your generosity, Russell, it will be there forever.
Why?
That and 4,000 moths. Carry on.
Why would you need to exercise vanity? I mean, I know the answer, but I'm very intrigued to hear it from your mouth.
Where else would you hear it from?
It's a very good point, and not take a deep breath, Russell.
I mean, with commendable self-restraint, you're actually not saying that I was at Oxford with you, and that...
Why would you tell me not to mention it?
Yes, well, I did. I thought it best not to mention it at the start, but that I was actually on the same staircase as you were.
And we have known each other 22 or 3
Yes,
years, actually, and you've done very well for yourself. But the academic thing is that you do, in fact, use a lot of your work is directly concerned with the rarefied passages of academia.
I mean, it's partly that I read a lot, and the things that sometimes I write out of things that I read rather than observe things. I mean, this is a...
I asked Alan to bring something, but he would
I didn't know what to do. I hadn't got anything. I mean, he wanted me to do a sort of sketch, and I couldn't really think of anything to do.
Well, you said how dare you said you wouldn't do one?
Well, that's right, but I wouldn't do it. Right. But this is a piece about I mean, it sounds dreadful to explain it. The art historian Bernard Berenson, who was a great social figure and lived in Italy and was visited by anybody who was anybody, and who's actually mentioned incidentally in the play that I've got on at the moment. And he lived at a villa near Florence called I Tatti. We were a small but distinguished party that climbed out of Florence that summer morning to call upon Berenson at I Tatti. Logan was there, who was, of course, Mary Berenson's brother, Bertrand Russell, the mathematical philosopher and brother-in-law of Mary Berenson, Alice, his first wife, her sister, together with Caine Costello, who had married Adrian Stephen, who was, of course, the stepdaughter of Berenson. Queen Helen of Romania excepted, we were just another family party. News of our arrival had preceded us, and Berenson was immediately on the defensive and had to be coaxed out from under a large Renaissance bed, whither he had retired at our onset. It was 20 years since I'd last been at I Tatti, and Bebe looked much older than when I'd last seen him, but perhaps that was only to be expected. He must have been 80 at the time of our visit, yet in many not uncharacteristic ways, his habits were those of a much younger man. As my wife sat beside him on the couch, his hand brushed lightly against her thighs. Tactile values, I heard him murmur. How very life-enhancing. But then, he had such beautiful hands. We talked for a while about art, a subject in which he evinced some interest, but he was not an easy conversationalist, as his mind dwelt very much in the past. Just fancy, he said, Goethe would have been 190 today, had he lived. I asked him about the people he'd known. Did he remember Proust? Or Wilde? Of Proust he retained a vivid memory, for he'd once seen him running down the Boulevard Haussmann, cramming cake into his mouth and shouting at the top of his voice Thomas Hood's poem, I remember the house where I was born. I wanted to know more. Had he known Queen Victoria or Prince Albert? Not well, he said shortly. or Pitt the Younger, or even Fox. But alas, he could not remember, and seemed weary of such questions. By now the room was beginning to fill up. Hemingway had come in with a trophy of his visit, a tortoise he had shot in the grounds. The Windsors were there, the Duff Coopers, Kaye Clark as he then was, and the Berlins, Irving and Isaiah. And there, right at the back, was Toscanini, perched like an organ grinder's monkey on the shoulders of the King of Sweden, an eminent archaeologist. I realized it was time to go. I kissed Bebe's shaking hand as it reached unerringly into my wife's blouse. Ah, Bebe, I murmured, où sont les amitiés amoureuses de ta jeunesse dorée? But he was already fumbling with Nancy Cunard. I remember pausing that sultry summer evening in 1939 as the storm clouds gathered to look back at the white villa on the hillside. Tata e Tati, I called, last bastion of a vanished world.
That programme was shown as a tribute to writer and broadcaster Russell Harty. who sadly died on Wednesday.